There is a wind on this earth that has never learned to stop. It crosses the Mongolian steppe for 1,000 kilometers before it reaches you, and in that entire distance, nothing slows it. No forest, no ridge, no wall of any kind. By the time it arrives, it doesn't feel like weather. It feels like a decision. A decision the earth has made about whether you deserve to live here. Wind chill drives the effective temperature past -50 degrees Celsius, and at that threshold, the rules change. Exposed skin doesn't sting, it doesn't burn. It simply stops responding, as if the body has quietly decided to surrender that part of itself to the cold. Metal doesn't flex under stress. It shatters like glass. Water poured from a height freezes before it ever finds the ground. And yet, in the middle of all of this, in the geographic heart of the most hostile plateau on the planet, a white dome sits anchored to bare earth. No foundation, no concrete, no engineered insulation, just felt and wood, and rising from its crown, one thin thread of smoke, steady and unhurried, as if the cold outside is someone else's problem entirely. Inside that structure, a family is asleep, not huddled, not shivering. Asleep, the way people sleep when they feel completely safe. The structure is called a ger. It is 3,000 years old. It has survived every winter this steppe has ever produced. And the moment you understand how, you will never look at a building the same way again. This is not a tent. This is not shelter in any ordinary sense of the word. This is a machine, a survival machine so precisely engineered that modern architecture, with all its materials science and computational design, has not produced anything that performs better under these conditions. But before we get to the machine, you need to understand the enemy it was built to defeat. The steppe does not kill with a single weapon. It is more patient than that, more creative, and far more thorough. The Mongolian herders who have lived here for millennia gave names to the ways the land tries to kill them, not out of poetry, but out of necessity. Because when something can end your life, you learn to name it precisely. You learn its patterns, you learn its warnings, and you pass that knowledge to your children before anything else. The steppe has 4 killers, and the Mongols named every one of them. The first is Chagan Zud, the White Death. Snow doesn't merely fall on the Mongolian steppe. It accumulates with a kind of deliberate violence, building in layers that can reach waist height, then higher. The ger disappears into white silence. The family cuts tunnels just to reach their animals. But the snow also presses down on the roof with increasing weight, demanding that someone climb up and clear it every few hours. Through the night, through the dark, through temperatures that freeze breath in the air. Because missing a single clearing cycle means the structure collapses under the accumulated tonnage. And if the structure collapses, there is nothing between the family and the open cold. The second is Kar Zud, the Black Death. No snow this time, just cold. -40, -45. The sky stays clear, the ground stays bare, and that exposure is its own kind of cruelty. Water sources freeze completely solid. The base of the ger, without a snowpack to insulate it, sits open to wind scouring that bleeds heat away continuously. The herds begin to weaken. They cannot reach the grass frozen beneath the surface. They lose weight quietly and steadily, and then they begin to die. And when the livestock die, the fuel dies, the food dies, and the family's margin for survival collapses with them. The third is Tumur Zud, the Iron Death. And this one is the most deceptive of all. A false spring arrives. Temperatures climb above freezing for a day or two. Snow melts into gray slush, and the herders feel the season beginning to turn. Then the cold crashes back overnight. Everything flash freezes. The ground becomes a solid mirror of ice, polished and impenetrable. Horses cannot break through with their hooves. Sheep cannot paw down to the grass that still exists, just centimeters below the surface. The animals stand on top of their food and starve. The ice reflects starlight back into the sky, increasing radiative cooling, pulling even more heat from the earth through the long night. It is a trap, disguised as a reprieve. The fourth is Kwitan Zud, the Cold Death. And unlike the others, it arrives without spectacle. No storm, no ice, no drifts. Just temperature that drops to 50 below zero and holds there, sometimes for weeks. Breath crystallizes in midair. Metal tools shatter if you strike them wrong. Every hour the stove burns through fuel that cannot be replaced until spring. Families press together under layers of sheepskin and move as little as possible, because movement burns calories, and calories, out here, are not comfort. They are the difference between making it to morning and not. This is the dzud that separates the families who prepared from the families who thought they had time. These 4 disasters once arrived on a rough 10-year cycle. Terrible, yes, but survivable. Enough time to rebuild livestock numbers. Enough time to replenish stores. Enough time to recover. Climate change has compressed that cycle to every 2 or 3 years, striking before the land and the families have any chance to recover. The enemy is not retreating. It is accelerating. And it is arriving more often than the old knowledge ever anticipated. 4 killers. 1 answer. But that answer took 3,000 years to build. Now we get to the answer. And the answer, it turns out, is not one thing. It is 4 things, layered on top of each other with a precision that took generations of failure to achieve. Every component of the Yurt exists because at some point in history, someone built it wrong, and people died, and the survivors made note of exactly what went wrong and never repeated it. This is not design by intention alone. This is design by consequence. And when you understand each layer, you begin to realize that what looks like a simple dome of felt and wood is actually one of the most sophisticated integrated systems ever produced by human hands. The first layer is the skeleton. Every material in the gear's frame was chosen because something failed when they used the wrong one. The wood is willow, birch, or larch, selected not for hardness, but for a specific quality that most builders never think to prioritize: behavior under stress. These woods bend before they break. The walls are built from collapsible lattice panels called kana, a grid of wooden strips pinned at their intersections in a repeating diamond pattern. That diamond geometry is not ornamental. It is a load distribution engine. When snow accumulates on the roof and presses down through dozens of angled roof poles, the force doesn't concentrate at one point and snap the structure. Instead, the diamond pattern transfers that vertical load laterally and then downward, spreading it evenly across the entire base. No single point bears the full weight. The structure shares the burden across every joint simultaneously. The joints themselves are bound not with metal, but with strips of raw camel hide called udir, applied wet and left to dry. As the hide dries, it shrinks, creating a grip tighter than any bolt. And unlike metal, which becomes brittle and shatters at -50, dried hide retains its elasticity. When a blizzard shakes the Yurt, the joints flex and absorb the vibration. The structure doesn't resist the storm. It breathes with it. Encircling the top perimeter of the lattice walls are heavy woven wool ropes called koshalan, tension bands that convert the roof's natural outward thrust into compressive hoop stress, squeezing the wall sections together. The physics creates a feedback loop that seems almost impossibly elegant. The heavier the snow load above, the greater the outward pressure from the roof poles, the tighter the koshalan clamp the walls. The structure automatically strengthens under the exact conditions designed to destroy it. The harder the wind blows, the more firmly the gear presses into the earth. The second layer is the skin. The frame gives the gear its shape. The felt gives it its life. And felt, real felt, made the way the Mongols make it, is not insulation in any sense that modern materials science fully anticipated. Manufacturing it is a community act, carried out every spring after shearing, when the dense winter undercoat is harvested from the sheep while it is still greasy with lanolin. The wool is spread on the ground, picked clean by hand, then wetted with water and fermented milk. It is rolled tightly around a wooden pole as thick as a human torso, wrapped in an older piece of felt for protection, lashed to a rope, and dragged behind a horse across the open steppe. For hours, across 10 to 15 kilometers of rough ground, children and elders take turns. They sing rhythmic work songs to coordinate the effort and mark the time. The sustained pounding compresses the fibers, generates friction heat, and forces the microscopic scales on each wool fiber to catch and interlock permanently, creating a textile that cannot be pulled apart. The finished sheet is 4 to 5 centimeters thick and heavy enough that lifting a full panel requires 2 people. But here is what makes felt genuinely extraordinary, and what separates it from every modern alternative. Wool is hygroscopic. It actively pulls moisture from the surrounding air. Inside a ger during a winter night, the air is humid, from the breath of sleeping bodies, from boiling tea, from the stove's combustion. As that moisture contacts the dry felt walls, hydrogen bonds form between the water molecules and the amino acids in the wool fiber. That bonding process is exothermic. It releases heat. 1 kilogram of dry felt can emit approximately 100 watts of thermal energy for several hours, simply through the act of absorbing moisture. The walls are not just blocking the cold, they are chemically generating warmth in response to the people living inside them. Modern insulation materials, fiberglass, rigid foam, are impermeable. Moisture that enters them has nowhere to go. It condenses, freezes, and destroys their thermal resistance from the inside out. Felt breathes. Moisture migrates through the wall and sublimates on the outer surface, keeping the material dry, functional, and thermally active all winter long. The third layer is the heart. In a landscape with no trees, the question of fuel is existential. The Mongols solved it by looking at what they had in abundance. Their herds. Dried cattle dung, called argol, burns fast and hot, useful in summer for quickly boiling water, but too short-lived for sustained winter heating. The winter fuel is kirgil, compacted blocks of sheep and goat dung, trampled into dense layers by livestock in their winter pens, and mixed with urine and earth over months. Herders cut these blocks from the pen floor in late autumn. Their energy density reaches 14 to 16 megajoules per kilogram, comparable to lignite coal, produced from nothing more than digested grass and thyme. The stove that burns this fuel sits at the exact geometric center of the ger, not by cultural preference, but by thermodynamic necessity. Heat radiating outward from a central source strikes the conical roof and rolls down the curved walls, establishing natural convection loops that carry warm air to every sleeping position along the perimeter. The circular floor plan has no corners, no dead zones where cold air can pool and stagnate. Every square meter of interior space receives the same thermal circulation. The stovepipe exits straight up through the tonneau, the central wooden ring at the apex of the roof. The temperature differential between the combustion chamber, burning at roughly 600 degrees Celsius, and the outside air at -50, creates a pressure gradient of enormous force, pulling fresh cold air in through deliberate gaps around the door, and expelling smoke upward through the tonneau, without any mechanical assistance. This is the stack effect, and in the ger, it operates as a self-regulating engine. If combustion slows and produces less heat, the draft weakens. More cold oxygen-rich air floods in from below, and combustion intensifies again automatically. The fire manages itself. The system finds its own equilibrium. The fourth layer is the human body itself. The ger provides the microclimate. The body must meet it halfway. Winter herders consume between 3,000 and 4,000 kilocalories per day, almost entirely from animal fat and protein. Mutton, beef, horse meat. Digesting these dense macronutrients is metabolically expensive work, and that expense produces heat. The process is called dietary thermogenesis, and it means that eating the right food in the right quantities is not just nutrition, it is a heating strategy. The body becomes its own furnace, stoked with the same deliberateness as the central stove. The deal coat wraps around the body and is secured with a silk sash wound tightly around the waist, creating a sealed air pocket across the chest that traps warm air directly against the heart and lungs. A wearable insulation layer that functions on the same principle as the felt walls. Mongolian boots carry a distinctive upturned toe, and while the cultural explanation involves respect for earth spirits, the thermodynamic reality is straightforward. The upturned design creates an air gap in front of the toes, insulating them from frozen leather and metal stirrups during hours of immobile riding when the feet generate almost no body heat of their own. Every layer integrates with every other. Shelter, fuel, food, clothing, each one an answer to the same pressure, each one calibrated to the same brutal standard. But the most sophisticated feature of the ger isn't any of this. It isn't the self-strengthening frame, or the heat-generating walls, or the self-regulating fire, or the metabolic strategy built into every meal. The most sophisticated feature is something you cannot see in the engineering at all, and that is what we are going to look at next. What we have covered so far: the frame, the felt, the fire, the food, those are the systems you can touch. But the Gur operates on a level beyond the physical, and understanding that level is what separates knowing how this structure works from understanding what it actually is. The Gur is not just engineered for thermal survival. It is engineered for human survival, and those are two very different problems. Keeping bodies warm is a physics challenge. Keeping a family functional, cooperative, and psychologically intact through 4 months of confinement in a space smaller than most living rooms, that is something else entirely. The Mongols solved both problems with the same structure, and they did it so completely that the solutions became invisible. They stopped looking like engineering and started looking like culture. But they were never just culture. They were always design. The Ger faces south, always south, without exception. The dominant winter winds arrive from the north and northwest, and a south-facing entrance shields the interior from the worst of those drafts. But that orientation does something beyond wind management. It turns the entire structure into a working solar chronometer. As the sun moves across the sky, its light enters through the tonneau and casts a shaft that travels slowly around the interior lattice wall at a perfectly predictable rate. The Mongols divided the day into 12 zodiac animal hours, each corresponding to a specific position of that moving sunbeam. Snake hour, 9 to 11, the light falls on the western wall. Horse hour, midday, it reaches zenith. Monkey hour, mid-afternoon, it touches the eastern sleeping platform. The family synchronizes milking, grazing, and cooking to the arc of the sun moving through their ceiling. No mechanical timepiece needed. The house itself is the clock. The interior space is organized with the same precision. The area opposite the entrance, the koimor, is the seat of honor, where elders sit in the warmest air, furthest from the cold of the door. The western half belongs to men, saddles, tools, fermented mare's milk. The eastern half belongs to women, cooking equipment, children's belongings. These divisions are not social hierarchy. They are spatial protocols that eliminate the friction of ambiguity. When 10 people share a circular room for months with nowhere to go, every object having a known place and every person having a known territory removes an entire category of conflict before it can begin. And then there is the fire. The hearth belongs to Gal Galdant, the fire spirit, and the rules surrounding it are strict. No trash into the flames, no water on the stove, no stepping over it. These prohibitions are described as spiritual, and perhaps they are. But they function as a compliance system that ensures the fire is always treated with the seriousness it deserves. Because any behavior that compromises that fire is a threat to survival, dressed in everyday clothing. The rituals don't just honor the fire, they protect it. They make reverence and safety the same act. Sometime around midnight, when the family is asleep and the stove has burned to low embers, the oldest child wakes alone, not because it was assigned, because it is understood, absorbed through years of watching, through winters of learning what it costs when the fire goes out. They feed the stove quietly, watch the flames return, and go back to sleep without waking anyone. They are learning something that no classroom teaches. That warmth is not a condition you find. It is a responsibility you maintain. This is how knowledge survives 3,000 years. Not in books, but in the body, in the dark, in the habit of a child who already understands that the difference between a warm morning and a dangerous one is whether someone cared enough to wake up in the night. Everything in the Ger is designed. Nothing is decoration. And that is precisely what we are about to see proven. In the one feature that makes all the others possible. Everything we have examined, the self-strengthening frame, the heat-generating walls, the self-regulating fire, the spatial protocols, the midnight vigil of the oldest child, all of it rests on a single foundation that has nothing to do with engineering and everything to do with philosophy. The greatest survival feature of the Ger is not how it stands. It is how completely, how quickly, and how many times it can be taken apart and moved. When pastures fail, when drought or dzud strips a location of everything that makes it habitable, the Mongols practice otor, a strategic relocation to reserve pastures hundreds of kilometers away. The Ger dismantles in 30 to 60 minutes. The kana folds flat, the poles bundle, the felt rolls. Everything loads onto 2 camels. And within 2 hours of arriving at new ground, the structure stands again. Oriented south, stove burning, family inside. The shelter follows the food source. The shelter follows the life. A fixed house cannot do this. On a landscape subject to catastrophic and unpredictable collapse, a fixed house is not security. It is a trap, one that roots you to a place that may decide, without warning, to stop sustaining you. The Ger understood something that most of human civilization has spent its entire history forgetting. That mobility is not the absence of home. Mobility is the highest form of home, one that cannot be taken from you, because it travels with you wherever the land still offers life. But that philosophy is now being tested in a way the original designers never anticipated. Today, hundreds of thousands of former herders live in Ulaanbaatar, in Ger districts that never move, fixed on frozen ground in a windless valley, burning raw coal instead of dung. The felt walls that once breathed freely on the open steppe now trap particulates inside a densely populated bowl. The tonneau that once vented into moving air now exhales into stagnant cold. Ulaanbaatar records some of the worst winter air pollution on Earth, and much of it comes directly from these stationary gears, from a system that was never designed to stand still, operating in conditions it was never designed to handle. Remove the mobility, and the system built on mobility begins to consume itself. The Ger did not fail in Ulaanbaatar. The city failed the Ger by making it stand still. And yet, on the open steppe tonight, where the temperature has fallen past 50 below, the system still works exactly as it was designed to work. The felt absorbs the breath of the sleepers and releases heat in return. The Koshilan tighten as the wind presses harder. The tonneau holds its eye open to a sky full of frozen stars. The fire burns low, waiting for the child who will wake at midnight, as they have done every winter night of their life, as 100 generations did before them, because survival is not a condition you are given. It is a discipline you inherit, practice, and pass forward, one cold night at a time. We call this ancient. They simply called it home, and in the only sense that truly matters, the sense that measures a home not by its permanence, but by its ability to keep you alive where life is hardest, it remains the most sophisticated home ever built. This has been Primal Echoes. If this changed the way you see what a building can be, if it made you mean something deeper when you say the word home, then you already know why this channel exists. We will see you on the next one.